evening, everybody. I'm Nigel and I'm very pleased to be hosting this event to celebrate this wonderful book. Have you weighed it, guys?
It was 10 kilos when I posted
10 kilos.
I still hear Warren
In your
over
head?
my shoulder, yes, whenever I'm drawing or doing something, saying, well maybe, but, and it doesn't need to say much more, because you know what he's saying is it's not quite good enough yet.
That was like Alvin, similar
That's
trick.
like Alvin, yes.
Never good enough.
Yeah.
And it is important that someone in a group,
Well, it's like David's remark to you.
yeah, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's an incredible motivation to move forward. But the book, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, is actually based on the output of magazines, the 9 magazines.
Because if you go backwards, you know, the number 9 was very influenced by David's lawn and the cover.
It was
which
indeed
is the garden and
the bottery.
Yeah, the bottery. And then if you go back, let's say, to number 5, it was preoccupied by projects for cities. And then if you go back to number 3, it was preoccupied by throwaway things.
But
And then there are in-between issues that were sort of almost, combinations, so that in number 6, there's a very, very, I think, worth careful study and probably better photographs, which was Warren looking at the 1940s, which are always the sort of lost
Oh, I
period.
remember that. Like
So
a
like a
slideshow or
whole-
a series of contacts.
Yeah, and it's a whole piece of research, quite serious research. And then the other half of the magazine launched into other
Was
things.
there ever a submission that the rest of you decided wasn't good enough and didn't make it into the magazine?
I don't think so.
It was rather the other way.
It wasn't edited really then, it was just
No, it was more the other way around. We'd see things in magazines and clip them out or
And then
contact
stick them
whoever
in.
did it, and I mean, like that's how Ron and Warren and myself got involved, because Peter saw the competitions that we were doing and thought they might be interesting,
Phone
and
them up or
contacted
wrote or
us.
something.
No. And so one of our competitions then was in Archigram too, before we'd met Peter and
Oh, I
David
see. When you were working on the Southland
GLC.
Centre?
Yeah.
And I think number 9 had a packet of seeds.
Yeah.
What was the idea behind that?
I don't really know actually. Seemed a really
Green
good
answer.
thing at the time. There were night flowering stocks. I don't know how many people. And it seemed since Archigram had become a little bit international, then Pete had done various things to do with the international. And I imagine these seeds traversing the globe somehow. And I'd just become very interested in the garden as a form of architecture.
Which
really.
was a theme, that things that grow became more and more important. That technology sort of quietened down somewhat in the later issues, and then nature sort of blossomed. Is that right?
Yes. Well, a kind of mechanised nature, I suppose.
Yes, there was lots of hidden stuff, and it's a bit like now, really, where kind of spaces don't necessarily correspond to what we need or think we're going to do in them. You can use your computer in the park, and how does it seem that the technology that you were envisaging as revolutionising architecture, how would you say that it's turned out to be in reality?
More
Or is it
nonchalant.
not there yet?
More nonchalant, I think. You know, in the sense that it's not necessarily categorised as one thing or another. It seems to happen. I mean, you do.
What technology enables
You can make your studies lying in bed, looking at a tablet or whatever the hell. It seemed quite. It had to be rhetorical. It had to have a imagery at the time, so that you wore something on your head that said this is a university, or there was not only the Archigram people, but in Austria everybody was doing audiovisual helmets. So you were saying this is a thing that will carry the world inside it. But it still looks like a something. Now, you know, we carry
Now it doesn't
black
actually.
box that could be, you know, we have things in our pocket that could be anything, but you have to know what they are. So they don't have form anymore.
It was like a lot of the way we've done exhibitions all the time, that you set up a situation where you're not making the choice for the observer makes their own choice, because it's like
a set of alternatives.
Well, it's like, I mean, I think it was Warren in one of his pieces described the city as a sort of cacophony of events, and as you walk down somewhere like Oxford Street, your experience is different from another guy's experience, because you pick up certain things and hear certain
kind of
sounds
situationist
and certain
thing.
smells and so on.
Yeah.
You could say that, yeah.
Well, I mean, the situationists inevitably get mentioned. I wonder, were they important for you guys, or were they just part of the, you'd heard of them, but they weren't really that?
Oh, there was one of their drawings in the exhibition.
There was.
The
one with the
dismembered
arrows.
Paris. Yes, the
Yes.
Paris drawing was in the
Naked
exhibition.
Didn't one
City.
of them go to Folkestone? I mean, it was one of my regrets of that era of never having met them, actually. But I was such an arrogant little sod. I thought they were just
Oh, they were too, by the way.
a bunch of dreary French intellectuals, you know. But, so that's a regret I
I
have.
remember Mike Webb and I going to hear Constant give a lecture, and in that same room in the ICA. But I have to admit that my memory of it is that we were more interested in the lusciousness of the slides than the political content. But that might
Yes,
have
but
been,
Constant-
you would have been more interested in political content. I was much more interested
Well, they
in the
were sort of
pictures.
working together, weren't they? But
My view would be that for me, most of the projects that one worked on could be buildings. And therefore I quite enjoy putting handrails and escalators that were the right pitch and toilets that were the right size. Why not? You know, and I used to get irritated with some of the particularly French projects that looked like they were made of kind of sponge and you couldn't get onto the platform.
so they needed to be plausible and credible.
If you ask me,
Okay.
but
well,
others
no,
would have other views.
David. The
Yes, I
language of
would
architecture. Well, you know, look, some of your drawings don't completely ignore the conventions of architectural drawings, where you're drawing logs or trees or lumps or whatever.
Yeah, well, and I suppose at one point I was working at Nottingham Art School later on with Victor Bergen, and
Who wrote
rightly
a
or
lot.
wrong, they had a huge change the way I began to think about what I was interested in. So I became less interested in things, what something looked like, but much more interested in why it looked like that. So
in the semiotically speaking, he was a
Yeah.
semiologist, wasn't he?
yeah, well, and there's an American artist called Joseph Kossuth who had the same view. Now, whether that was right or wrong, I don't know, but I saw it as part of Archigram. I didn't see it as another way of looking at how you might look at architecture. You know, so some critic might say that I was a failed architect, but hopefully there's a sort of architecture that is about architecture, you know. But my early work was very perfectly buildable. I can draw a stair. I know all the difficulties of how to draw a stair handrail that maintains its right correct height above the set. But I wonder, you mentioned the weight of the book. So Bucky never asked us to weigh our books, did he? And what interested me in a strange way is I reflect backwards on it, is you start off with an A4 sheet and a potato print, which is what, 2 grams, is it? I don't know. And you finish up with 10 kilos. And I went, no,
How does this connect with Swinging London? Were you part of that, or did you hate it?
I knew George best.
You did. Did you have a drink with him?
Yes, often. Well, he was a friend of Paul Smith. I used to work with Paul Smith.
Oh, well, Paul Smith was, in
And
those
they did a
days
shop
had
in
long hair and he
Manchester.
had an Afghan dog, I remember, and he used to wear
Yeah.
yellow knee-high stack-heel boots with stars on.
Oh, you knew his dog? was a real...
Anyway, as ever, inspiring, provocative, and I think this book will be pored over by many. If you would like to have a signed copy, I think signing is about to take place, but leaves me to thank you, all three of you, for being here this evening, and to you, thanks very much.
Thank you.